Jane, you're here at the World Economic Forum, where the theme is all about rebuilding trust. What kind of conversations have you had, and has it made you feel more optimistic about our future?
Well, actually, I came here to give people hope about our future. That's my mission in life. And so I'm not feeling, that people have made me more optimistic. I'm actually helping them to feel more optimistic. So the theme is about rebuilding trust. I think we have to really work very hard for nature to trust us because we've treated the natural world so very badly.
What would you like the leaders that you've been talking to here, from governments, from businesses, to do?
Well, I'd like them to think a little bit more about the future when they make decisions as to how to move forward with their work. And, climate change is the big ogre that threatens us. It's very real. I think the effects are being felt all around the world now with the changed weather patterns. And climate change goes hand in hand with loss of biodiversity because we depend on the natural world, but we depend on healthy ecosystems, and we're destroying them, particularly forests. That's one of the great ways to absorb CO2 from the atmosphere. So there's an awful lot of talk about technology, grabbing CO2 and storing it, but the trees are there, the kelp forests in the ocean, the peatlands, and that's much cheaper. We just have to conserve them, protect them, and in some cases restore them and plant trees.
Well, of course, during your last visit, you helped champion the UN's Trillion Tree campaign. Do you remain a big supporter of it, Jane? Do you believe it's possible to reach the goal of planting and protecting 1 trillion trees by the end of the decade?
I think it's quite possible. We have the Jane Goodall Institute. We have a program for young people, roots and shoots, kindergarten through university. It's now in 70 countries. And just about every group is doing its bit in planting trees. But we have to realize you've got to plant the right kind of tree in the right place at the right time of year and look after it. So that's really a part of our mission, is to make sure that the trees we plant will survive. But protecting the forest now is desperately important because it's going to take time for these little trees to grow up to do their proper role of absorbing CO2. And then, of course, as forests are destroyed so fast, that's releasing all the stored CO2 back into the environment.
Well, of course, there's a lot of talk here about all the geopolitical crises, the economic headwinds. Are you worried that the urgency of the climate action is being threatened?
Well, there's an awful lot of people on this planet. And people, fortunately, we have different passions. And some people are passionate, to help the refugees. Well, I think we'd all like to help the refugees. We'd all like to help get food and medicine into Gaza, where children are having operations without anesthetic because there isn't any left. But there are still thousands and hundreds of people who want to protect Mother Nature. And climate change is something that's going to affect us way into the future. Hopefully, these horrible wars will stop, because they always have in the past. I lived through World War II, and it's also very important for voters, at least in a democracy, to try and vote for people and also business leaders to employ people who care about the future and make decisions that will benefit future generations.
Jane, what made you care? Can I take you back to the young Jane Goodall?
I was born loving animals, just like that. And when I was growing up, television hadn't been invented. So my learning, my teachers were my garden at home, the cliffs and the seashore, and books. And, I couldn't just sit in front of television, and there was no YouTube or anything like that. So it was so much better because I had my hands in the ground. And when you get children out into nature, it's actually beneficial to them. For we just heard this soothing music. In Japan and Canada, doctors can prescribe time in nature for mental and physical health. And it's the same sort of thing. Nature has that soothing quality that this kind of music also has.
Jane, of course, you're such a trailblazer in all your work. How did it come about? How did you end up doing?
Well, this is going to sound strange, but you know, so I was born loving animals. I decided when I was 10 that I would go to Africa, live with wild animals, and write books about them, because girls weren't scientists in those days. And everybody laughed at me. How would I do it? We didn't have money. Africa was dangerous. It was full of fierce wild beasts and cannibals and things like that. And you're just a girl, but not my mother. And this is a point that I think is really important for a parent to support the dreams of their child. And Mum just said, well, if you really want to do something like this, you'll have to work really hard, take advantage of opportunity. And if you don't give up, hopefully you find a way. So I did. And, you know, it wasn't easy. I had to get a job. We had no money for university. To get the fare, when I was invited by a school friend to Kenya, I worked as a waitress in a hotel around the corner. And then I just met Louis Leakey, and on a plate I was offered not just any animal, but the one most like us.
Yeah. And of course, your relationship with them has been so enduring throughout the years.
Yes, well, you know, chimpanzees, the amazing thing was how like us they are, kissing, embracing, holding hands, males competing for dominance, swaggering, standing upright, shaking their fists. Does that remind you of something human male politicians a little bit?
Are there any male politicians here?
So anyway, but you know, there's also these long-term bonds between mothers and offspring. They can live up to 50 years in the wild. And there's unfortunately a dark, brutal side. They kill, they have territory that the males patrol, even a kind of primitive warfare, but also love, compassion, and altruism.
Jane, what can everyone do today, you think, right now, to help make the planet a better place? You've been a tireless campaigner for over 60 years now with this.
Well, there's one thing people don't always quite understand, but moving towards a plant-based diet is really important, because it's not only the unbelievable cruelty inside a factory farm, but to feed the billions and billions of imprisoned animals, you have to clear huge areas of habitat to grow the grain and the soy, to feed them, masses of fossil fuel used, pesticides and herbicides, killing the soil. In some places, we're short of fresh water, and a lot of water is needed to change vegetable to animal protein. And they're all producing methane, especially cows. And that's one of the very, very virulent greenhouse gases.
Well, of course, you work with young people through your Roots and Shoots program. How important is it for you, and do you think the future of the world, to engage future generations?
Well, it's desperately important. You know, I realized back in the early 1980s that the reason that so many forests are destroyed in Africa and Asia and other developing countries is people, the local communities, are trying to survive. And around Gombe, where the chimp research is, they were cutting down trees in order to make money from charcoal timber or to make land to feed their growing families. And so when I flew over what was once a great forest stretching all the way to West Africa, and I saw the Gombe National Park, a tiny island of forest surrounded by bare hills, and it just hit me, if we don't help these people find a way of living without having to destroy the environment, we can't save chimps, forests, or anything else. And so our Takari program was born, which costs a lot of money, but it's in 104 villages throughout the chimp range, gives girls scholarship to go to school, microcredit for the villagers to choose their own small, environmentally sustainable businesses. And because we didn't go in saying, well, we've got to preserve chimps, but we went in to help them. Now they understand that protecting the environment isn't just for wildlife, it's their own future. And we've introduced some technology. They check the health of their village forest reserve with iPhones and things like that. That's now in 6 other African countries where we study chimpanzees. But all of this costs money.
Yes.
And if the young generation isn't growing up to understand and want to carry on, then we're sort of wasting our time. It's like, you know, baby trees take a long time to get mature. So this Roots and Shoots program that I mentioned, young people, all ages, it's in every single one of the Tukari villages around Gombe. It's spreading right across Tanzania and other parts of Africa. We've got over 1,000 groups in mainland China. We're growing in the Middle East. We're all over the Americas and moving further and further into Eastern Europe.
Will you ever slow down, Jane? I believe you're in your 90th years, 90 years young. Do you ever want to slow down?
I can't, can I? You know, I think I was born into this world with a mission.
Yeah.
It took me a while to find it, and now it's to give hope, because if people lose hope, they become apathetic. They do nothing. And if everybody becomes apathetic, particularly the young people, and loses hope, then we're doomed. You know, humans are not exempt from extinction. We must protect the natural world. We must give children, and they are my greatest reason for hope, because everywhere I go, there are these young people. They're so passionate and dedicated and persistent once they know the problem and we empower them to take action. They're changing the world as we speak now.
Jane, you've also changed the world. If you look back at your incredible career so far and everything you've done, and I know you're still doing so much, and you will, but can you pinpoint one of your proudest moments?
One of my proudest moments, oh dear, that's really difficult. I think it was probably the first time a chimpanzee group let me come close, and they just looked at me. Instead of running away as usual, they just sat and went on grooming each other. And that really was like, wow, I've done it, because I only had money for 6 months. And for 4 whole months, they ran away. And this was right at the end of that 4th month.
And they connected.
And suddenly they realized that I wasn't going to harm them in any way. I was accepted. And that really was a very proud moment.
And just finally, Dame Jane Goodall, what is your message here at Davos, at the World Economic Forum, and beyond to everyone?
Well, I think, you know, the main message is there is hope, but it involves every one of us taking action now. We can't just sit there and wait for other people. Every day we live on this planet, we make some impact. And people are beginning to think about that environmental impact they make. So if everybody goes through every day thinking about what they do, if it harms the environment, if it's helpful for future generations, you know, that will really make a big, big difference. But for Davos, well, one, like I said, trying to persuade people to elect those individuals who care about the future, who want to protect forests and the ocean and clean up the plastic and try and undo some of the harm that we've done. That's an incredibly important message. And we can all do something. What we buy, where was it made? Did it harm the environment? Was it cruel to animals? Is it cheap because of unfair wages somewhere else? We can all do that every day.
Well, Dame Jane Goodall, you're an inspiration to all. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you.